I'm Christina Hall. I'm the director of Amazon advertising at Nectar. I've been in e-commerce for over 13 years now, which is crazy just to think about. But I started out with Google and social media, and then the past going on 6 years now with Amazon specifically. And I've been working with all kinds of partners, from the small budgets to the big budgets, and all types of categories, anything under the sun that you can think of in product specific. And for our partners, I'm really helping the team and supporting our experts, the advertising managers, to really support the brands the best way possible to really grow them on Amazon, specifically with advertising. Most of the time you have a method and you think for one of your brands and it works and you get the results, and then you test it with something else and it might not work. It might not even work with the same brand in the same category because of where they are in the competitive place, the budget that they have, the brand awareness, all of the different things. Very fast paced, and you always have to rethink and test and experiment. And I think that's the interesting part that we get to do, that we always get to reinvent the different strategies and test something new. You always have the foundation, I think, and that's something that I see a lot of brands fail at, that they don't have the foundation in place. And with foundation, I mean they have a good campaign set up. Well, first of all, they have a good understanding of what they want to achieve with PPC on Amazon. Like, have a clear objective, have clear goals, understand who your target is, and don't say, yes, consumer goods especially, like they can advertise to everybody because everybody uses them. But who really wants your product? Like, there's almost always like a misalignment. So reeling in what that looks like, and then having the campaigns based on your budget broken out so it makes sense. I feel like a lot of the times when we get brands, we get campaigns that are just thrown together, and there's a lot of mix match products in a campaign and mix match keywords, not just like generic keywords, different types for the products, but also branded and non-branded mixed together. And so that is a foundation with us, that we always separate those. But again, going back to the basics, you also you want to have the campaign structure, you want to have good keywords. And that's also one mistake that I feel like a lot of brands make when they first go onto Amazon, is they put a broad keyword in and then think, oh, it has great search volume, so I'm going to get a lot of traffic. That means I'm going to get a lot of sales. But there's a disconnect that just because you throw out a broad match doesn't mean that everybody necessarily going to click on your product. There is more that goes into that. And you actually, especially when you first start out and when you have a smaller budget too, I think that's important too, to look at what your budget looks like, also in comparison to what your competitors on the marketplace are spending. I think that's also one important factor. What I look for is, what are your goals? Do you want to increase your sales, your top line sales? Do you want to increase your brand awareness? Are you new to the space? And it has to be a mix of those different campaign types. Do you need to gain market share? Do you have a specific competitor that is the category leader and you just need to really get more competitive and take some market share from them? So there are different strategies. So with sales specifically, if you want to grow that, I would always say sponsor products. Like, that's your go-to. You should always have that in your mix, no matter what. And then sponsored brands is really great. The headline search, so the top of search placement, it can get very expensive. So you want to be strategic about what products, what keywords, all of those things. Keep that in mind. But also the sponsored brands video is something that I see brands not utilizing enough, and that depending on where you are in your category, is definitely not saturated. That's always a great way to get your product out there, both for increasing your sales, but also increasing the awareness for your product and for your brand. So you can really mix and match that. And then sponsor display, I would really use offensively and defensively. So what that means is to defend your own brand, because sponsor display is showing up on the product detail page, those ads. And they usually show up right under the buy box and under your listing. And you want to make sure that your products are showing up there and not your competitor products. So that is one thing that we also see that is missing for a lot of brands. And brands don't pay a lot of attention to it, because that, again, is brand awareness. That is defending your position in the marketplace instead of really going for the sales. There are strategies and tactics that you can do to encourage users to buy more. So increase the basket or the cart value for your brand and products. But for most of the parts, it's like defensive. Don't expect a good increase in sales just from that. And then offensive is when you actually place your products on your competitor detail pages, which is also, you should be very strategic about it, looking at where your competitors are. If you're going against the leader in the category, it's going to be very expensive because they're definitely going to defend their own products. So you want to take a look at those different aspects of it too. And then also what the reviews are of competitor products, what the pricing is, and is your target audience actually going after the market leader, or are they other competitors that would be more desirable for you to go after? So there's a few things to think about.
From our data so far, we actually ran a case study that you're aware of, where we did sponsored brand video with a few of our partners. And interestingly enough, it may be more expensive, but on average, across all of the campaigns that we were running, and we were running all campaign types for those partners, it converts at a 200 to 300% increase over the other types of campaigns and other types of campaign media. So sponsored brand video is super important for driving sales, and especially brand awareness and new to brand sales.
Yes, you have the opportunity for, or with your customers, with your target audience, that they get to know you on a different level. Like, yes, a picture says 1,000 words, more than 1,000 words, but video can really tell your story and can tell, like, how do I use the product? What does it look like in my everyday life? And that brings so much value, because that's, when I look at myself as a consumer, I want to see what I'm getting. Online shopping is great, but from a picture, I usually don't always see everything. So video is really a very good opportunity for brands to get their name out there, to get more awareness out there, and then also turn potential customers into actual customers and also repeat customers. So I would look at the overall metrics, first of all, like just to get a big picture overview of where they are at. And then I would look at the campaign structure, how and what campaign types have they running already, because there is like usually low-hanging fruits right there. And then from the campaign structure, I also want to see, like I said earlier, if they are segmented by brand versus non-brand, and even segmented by competitors. Sometimes brands also have like mixed keywords and ASIN targeting. Like, you want to have a clean picture there and a clean structure. Again, that can be really low-hanging fruit, especially when you separate that out, you have so many opportunities to allocate your budget and just your bidding as well for the keywords and targets. So those would definitely, that would be my first go-to. The third, I would look at their negative keywords and if they even have any, because that is like most likely a lot of brands don't.
So many people overlook negative keywords. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah, and it's so easy. Like you can save a lot of money because people type in so many different things, and you don't want to come up for, I don't even know. We have a brand that comes up, their brand name with a water filtration system, whereas they don't sell that. So you don't want to come up for that, and make sure that it's a negative keyword. It's really that easy. Or like with the pet brands that I said, you want to make sure that the specific products are for pets, not for humans. Like, those differences. And you can easily do that from the get-go. You don't even need to look at your data. You know what your product or who your product is not for, what your product doesn't do. So add those from the start as negatives. And you're good to go and save a lot of money in the long run.
For sure.
And then another part I would also look at is the placements and just the bidding structure in general. Like where do you show up, top of search versus rest of search, and where do you get your conversions? And then make sure that that is aligned in. If it's top of search, make more top of search campaigns. If it's rest of search, then really save those keyword bids or target bids, and you can allocate the budget somewhere else. And then another one, also making sure that you have different types of keywords, not different types of keywords, but different match types. Don't just use broad, don't just use phrase or exact, like have a good mix and have them separated so that you can actually also allow the budget allocation to be working in your favor and not just spending more on one versus the other when it's not getting you the return that you are looking for. And then everything else would be going into the structure of the campaigns, going deeper into different keyword strategies, like what keywords you're bidding at. Is it like too broad? Is it needs to be long tail? Going more into the reporting of Amazon. But I think like when you first get a picture of the account, where the metrics are at, and also understanding where the client wants to be at, I think that's another piece. Like, what are your goals when they say, yeah, I want to make 10 million on Amazon, but right now you make 1? It's like, okay, let's see what we can do with this, because that's a big jump, right? So we want to set realistic expectations in that regard too. If you drive traffic to your listing and the listing is not optimized, yeah, you don't want that. You're gonna suffer, and that PPC is not gonna be able to save that. So I think that understanding and giving clients like a realistic overview of that.
If you can get your product in front of the right audience, that's a lot of work. It's its own category of things. If when they arrive, they don't like what they see, all of that was for nothing. That's wasted money.
It depends. Like when we look at campaigns, we're of course looking at ROAS and ACOS and tacos. So I would say, yes, we have a system that we flag different metrics that we align with each client on beforehand to make sure that we're tracking against those metrics. And that can also be clicks and impressions when we go after the brand building and taking market share, those different strategies and tactics. So it can literally be any metric depending on what you set the goal at. But for the most part, we definitely ACOS, ROAS, click-through rate too, making sure like that gives you an understanding. Yes, you drive a lot of impressions, but nobody's clicking through, or something's going on, right? The back end. So you want to make sure you're looking at that. And we have a system where we flag those metrics based on the goals that we have and how far off we are from that. I would always put it in relation what your goal is. And there are definitely also category benchmarks that we're looking at and what we try to get to. There's so many different scenarios depending on the client, depending on the budget, depending on the product life cycle, depending if they're new to Amazon's season on Amazon.
Brands enter different stages of life as they grow and become more established, and you'd adapt because the thing that grew you at one stage is not necessarily going to be the thing that grows you at another. And then, I mean, just category differences, what it is matters, but things like price point matter. You're not going to use the same strategy for a $500 product that you are for something that somebody's buying for $5. It makes a huge difference. Everything is driven by profit at the end of the day.
Just because one thing didn't work one time doesn't mean it might not work in the future. It might be it wasn't the right timing. It wasn't because of seasonality of where they are at in the year. So there are a lot of variables to factor and to think about when you really look at those numbers. Yeah, they're red flags, but you have to look at the whole picture and the big picture of what you were trying to do. We have checks and balances in place. Campaigns are pretty much touched every day in some way, shape, or form. And we have regular check-ins, like we have like a tracking system and a reporting system. So we always have all of the metrics, those goal metrics that we are tracking right there. Anything that is going in the wrong direction, we can see it and then not react to it, but even be proactive in realigning it to where the goal needs to be. And that you just need to do that because you get a lot of quick results with PPC. You can get quick results. You don't want to look at quick results. You want to have a long-term strategy. Like that's just putting that out there. You don't want to just look at the short-term results, but you can get results pretty quickly with the ads. But you also want to make sure that you refine and adjust and monitor everything that you do very regularly. And not just like one of the things that we do is we don't start, completely new account or new campaigns on a Friday because we know we're not gonna be able to monitor it as much over the weekend as we can when we started on a Monday. So we have rules like that in place. Besides our system and our dashboards, how we track it, that prevent us from, going anywhere outside of those guardrails. So yes, it's very important. Refinement, adjustment, every time, all the time. You cannot just set up a campaign and leave it and forget about it and think that it's running.
I think that a lot of brands that either try to do it by themselves or leave it to a lower cost agency or computer solution tend to get distracted by big vanity metrics or do a set it and forget it and don't pay enough attention to it. What's really dangerous is when they achieve some level of success with that method. So they think they're doing fine, but then they could be doing so much better and they're wasting a lot of money. See that all the time. You could flood your metrics right now for each one of our brands and get everybody on Amazon to see the product. Doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it. So
exactly. When you set up the campaign and you think, it's working, I've seen that in every single time that there's this one keyword or this keyword cluster that is really working and you put everything behind it and you feel safe and you got this. And then the next year, it just doesn't work anymore. And not at all. So you have to, you cannot just rely on a few things, on a few keywords, on a few campaigns. You always have to adjust. You always have to see what the marketplace is doing. You always have to look at the search volumes, what the trends are. There can be seasonality trends. There can be trends like, we saw in the last 3 years when more people are going online and you get that influx of traffic. But you have to be right there when it happens and not just reactive like a month later. So, oops, what are we going to do now?
Right. And I'm always wary of that. Seems like every time I run a campaign and I flip the switch on, I get that first spike of metrics and I'm like, yeah, this is doing good. But you can't just rely on that to continue in that fashion. You have to keep checking in on it regularly. I think that's great that we have that rule that we don't start campaigns typically at the end of the week so that we can monitor it more closely.
When we set up campaigns and we plan campaigns out before we launch them, we make sure that, everything's great. We have the bidding, we have the budget in place, we know exactly the keywords, we know the placements where it's going to show up, and everything is checking off the boxes, right? Everything looks great. But once it's actually out there, you also want to check back right away, see how it's actually going. Because in your mind and on paper, it can look great. But how does it actually do in the marketplace? What is actually going on? It really depends on, are you launching like before Prime Day? Then that's a whole different picture than launching in February, where there's nothing for your specific brand that you need to worry about. So we always check back right away, make sure that everything's set up correctly, that it's running in the system. And then the next day, like, what does it actually look like? Do we need to make any adjustments? Because yes, we can also understand what we start out with the bids, for example, but then they might be too low, they might be too aggressive. So you want to really make sure that that's aligned from the get-go.
We've made a bunch of very good case studies showing the extreme results that we get for our customers. And it's always nice to show a big number. But what people probably don't see that I really am impressed with is the Nectar Slack channel. And what you have is people constantly sending updates about the Amazon policy now says this. Who does this affect? We tried this and we got this result. Do you think this would work for this other partner? And so it is a consistent effort at making sure everything is working and a consistent effort at finding new opportunities for the partners. And that's so cool to see in action. Those little things, those little incremental things are what lead to the big result that we want to make into a case study.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to, you want to have your foundation set. You want to have the basics down. And like with adding negatives, like it's basic, right? But it can have such a big impact on how your campaigns are doing, how your sales are going to go. And the cool part with Nectar is too, like, we're very collaborative and we share, like you said, a lot of those ideas. And it's not about sharing them to compete, like, or have our partners compete, but really sharing how we can utilize a specific strategy and now use it in a different category, and how we can make it work, and just think outside the box constantly. That's something that I encourage everybody on the team, always think outside the box. Like, what would someone who is buying that product, what else are they looking for? How can we tie that in? How we can connect those, so that we're really making it as easy as possible for that customer to get what they are going to Amazon to shop for. Like, that is the best thing, because I definitely get annoyed when I can't find what I'm looking for, and I'm like, I have all the keywords in there, like, I'm doing my part, like, why is nothing showing up, right? And one other thing that we do at Nectar that's very important is that we have trainings, and we're for the team every week on all those different things, so the team, everybody's on the same page. and everybody knows exactly what's working, what's not working, even if they don't work on a specific account. We also have the luxury at Nectar to be very closely working with Amazon and getting those notions like where Amazon is going to go firsthand before most other people know about it. So we can test, different things. We know about campaigns that are coming out, new types of campaigns, and we can prepare ahead of time what that can look like, and then tell our partners about that and how they can utilize and benefit from it for their specific account.
The case study that I mentioned about sponsored brand video, and you know this, is we were the only person to present a case study to Amazon, to a room full of decision makers and people that are deeply involved in the Amazon process and huge agencies and brands about the results of this campaign. So we really do pioneer the use of some of these things and get to see what works, what doesn't work, and get to firsthand talking with Amazon deliver those benefits to our partners. It's excellent.
Yeah, and we also have the advantage at Nectar that we have our own design team, our own photography and videography team, and we work closely together so that we actually have a meeting later today that we're going to talk about an out-of-the-box idea for a video for a specific brand so they can stand out in the marketplace. So, and that's cool that we can do that in a very timely fashion, whereas most of the time you have to talk to so many different teams and all over the place and find a time to talk, whereas we send a Slack message, we say, hey, there's an idea, can we do that? And then we collaborate and we make it happen. So that is really neat as well.
Christina, this has been a lot of amazing information. You've certainly educated me. And there's a lot going on the back end that people take for granted. And it takes a lot of resources to manage these things. And our people are doing a great job. I appreciate your time answering these questions. And I'm going to let you get back to it. I know you've got so much more. You already said that you've got another meeting to get to. And thank you for your time. And well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And maybe we'll do it again with some more questions. There's a ton more to talk about, for sure.
Yes, there is. And if you're interested in more, visit our website at thinknectar.com.